Ready? Okay. So the main thing I hope everybody gets out of these course and lectures is the principles, right? If we're journeying towards healing, the path towards healing, or as practitioners, we're journeying towards the ever evasive path towards mastery, right? We're always stepping up. And remember, all of our healing and all of our practitioner knowledge is based on foundational concepts. You don't become a master, or if you can't heal, you are basically you're missing some principal concepts. Same with the practitioner. If you feel like you can't get to another level, if you talk to any great master, whether it's sushi or whether it's herbal medicine or swordsmanship or gymnastics, right? Like the best coaches will tell you again and again, right? My daughter's softball pitching coach, right? It's like, Aurora, nope, you're avoiding, you're not following the principle. When you do just the basic principle, right? Everything works in perfect dynamics. No mystery about it, right? So, one of the concepts that I don't know how we would categorize this. One of my teachers, uh, Shifu Chen, said that, the path to healing is boring. He said it with a smile. And I think about this every day when I'm talking with people and in my own life, because there's a lot of truth in this. There's a lot of humor in this. Because as we journey towards health, as a lot of you know, we start to maybe react to foods that our body doesn't like as we start to listen to it. As our body becomes healthier and more fit and our gut heals, our body begins to talk to us and say, I don't like this food. So we get acid or stomach ache, right? And we usually get to the point with a lot of people where you start to have like an alcohol drink, and usually your body just goes, I just don't feel good from that anymore. So, as we move towards healing, to some people, it can look boring. Part of it is because the ego loves to be amused. The saboteur part of ourself likes drama. It likes chaos, right? Uh, in healing, the injured part of ourself likes disorganization, right? It likes to be entertained and amused. That's why I always have like a saying that the person you can most trust is the person who can sit on a meditation cushion for an hour and sit there. That's the person you can most trust, because that's one of the hardest things you can ever do. You have to wrestle with yourself, and it's such a feels boring. But eating healthy, to people seems very boring. Why would you eat that bland food when you can have this awesome, like super, super pizza with all of this on it, right? Not that pizza couldn't be made really healthy, right? Yes, yeah. Or meditation, right? Which is great for healing our body and mind. Looks very boring to people, doing yoga to a lot of people that are maybe athletically minded looks and feels boring and they don't like it, right? Meditation, relaxation. Why would you want to sit and just relax? That's so boring, right? As we become mentally healthier, we also kind of gravitate away from often people that are more drama filled. Um, Not that we're moving towards people that are boring, but we're kind of usually moving towards people that are more balanced, right? Not that it's not fun to have some friends like that, right? That can draw out part of ourselves. But as a general theme, this starts to happen, right? Um, the lifestyle that we have can often look very boring. We have calm music playing at home and aromatherapy, walking on the beach instead of like jet skiing and jumping over waves, like all these things, it's a matter of perspective. But we also have to be able to, I feel a lot of people in their healing journey start to brush up against this. We see this most dramatically when people have addiction. People go from being a drug addict or an alcoholic and their whole identity. So it's easier to see this in more extreme situations. People often, I had this conversation with a couple spouses this week, like whose partners are truly alcoholics, right? And they're having to decide, at what point do I have to get out and what point do I stand by my part? It's very complicated, right? So it's easy to see that in something so dramatic because people that are in addiction, there is some drama or excitement, a short-term excitement. Like, let's all admit it's really fun to go out to the bar and drink with friends, and we've all been at stages of our life where it's like, oh, this is so fun, we're having a blast, right? And then you feel really horrible the next day, right? So we can relate to people, right? We can relate to that. But we see that when people are, for example, alcoholics, they can't pull out of it because this other reality looks boring. So this term is really important because what is looks boring to someone might be exciting in other ways. Like to me, waking up not having a hangover is a great way to start a Saturday morning. Like I woke up early this morning. I'm really excited to teach. I didn't get drunk last night, right? So like boring is relative, and our ego or our saboteur and all of our healing, we have to think of like almost ourselves as we're healing, like almost the idea of an alcoholic. We're caught in like a situation that we're trying to get out of. It's the same process of overcoming addiction. It's the same thing. We don't always know we're in it. We don't know what part we're trying to change or work with sometimes.
Kind of feel like when you change that you're losing a part of
Yes,
yourself.
you are. It's an identity change. That's why a lot of people can't go from being either the party person or the drama person or the one who's always going out and doing things right to not being that, because to them, they've lost themselves. But what they really thought was themselves is really not, right? All the friends they think you have when you're, for example, an alcoholic, those are not really your friends in the first place, right? Those are people that are enabling you, right, to be a worse person. So we have to like be careful of this. I listened to my daughter, who I'm trying to get to meditate and do relaxation. And the first thing she says is, Dad, that was just too boring. I'm not going to do that. So we also have to be creative. So I'm like, okay, well, we're going to find ways to help create this, right? Without it looking a certain way or using a certain vocabulary. This is also, though, where people get caught because some things look flashy, right? We see ads on TV for some new supplement, or there's some secret recipe, or there's some new meditation technique that somebody invented or something. We have to be careful for when things are flashy. Like for example, there's a lot of new Tai Chi forms that people have made in the last 20 years. And honestly, most all of them are people that don't know a thing about Tai Chi. So they look cool and they look very poetic, but they violate every principle of how Tai Chi works and what you have to have there to be Tai Chi. But we're drawn to that more than the Qigong we did earlier, that's really kind of boring and gentle and slow. Why not when you could do something like really jumping around and looking really tough, you know? Yeah. Yeah. More so. Yeah. 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 So in modern times, this is becoming like an issue, right? Because phones and social media is an addiction. Like, I mean, we all struggle. Have to watch out, We all, have it. Give me a good, like one funny TikTok, and it's like before you know it, you're like going through funny stuff, right? Um, so we all kind of deal with this, but again, it's the idea that to people it's exciting, it's stimulating the nervous system, which we're trying to regulate the nervous system, right? We're trying to calm and restore. So yeah, my Shifu Shen used to say the path towards healing is very boring. You go to bed on time, right? You wake up at a decent time. You allow yourself to sleep more if you can. You meditate and relax and spend time in nature, things that to a lot of people would look very boring. But when you start to do these things, what I want to remind everybody is that's why we have to change our idea of the word, is that when you do yoga or qigong or sit on a beach and watch a sunset, can be such powerful feelings and healing and even just wisdom can hit us when we're in this more peaceful, relaxed state, right? That it is exciting, right? So when you do yoga and you get to a deeper level for the first time or Tai Chi, it's not boring anymore. It's now like exciting. Um, and it can almost become like an addiction from the sense of, when you don't have it, you realize what you're not getting, right? Or when you start to learn to regulate your nervous system and you get really anxious, you feel that like dichotomy. And at a point, you realize this doesn't feel good being anxious and having constant thoughts like that. That is not exciting to me anymore. This is exciting. So, not that everybody has to be flat and monotone, right? We're not talking about that. We're just talking about changing what we identify as boring or exciting and helping other people do it. Because this is going to get more challenging with the healing process because, also boring, right? The path to being healed, the path towards being expert or a master in anything does require work. And that is not always exciting work, right? Could be boring. It could be monotonous at times. It could be scary. It could be frustrating. And in the world, where Google and AI is becoming godlike, truly, to people, that I'm really afraid like there's gonna be people who they're not gonna be masters of anything, right? Whether it's herbal medicine or acupuncture or art or any writing, what's going to happen to poetry and all that, right? With AI and all these things. So it's really important topic to think about. But, as you do gravitate towards a path towards healing, you will change. What you identify with will change. And there's scary parts of that, right? As people, again, easy to see with something like alcoholism, where somebody's partner is saying, I don't want to be around alcohol anymore. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm not going to associate with it. This is my boundary. This is it, you know? if you want this, go have that. This is where sometimes in our journey towards healing, we do have to make decisions sometimes, right?
Yeah,
For the long term, for the big picture.
think I found that, when you start thinking about emotions and your own emotions, how deceitful they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, not that you don't feel something for something, but
Right.
if you don't just get all wound up or
Yes.
all wound
Yeah.
down because of an emotion,
Yeah.
that's boring to some people.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
maybe they
Oh,
say,
yeah.
or they'll say like, you just don't care.
Yeah.
No, it's not that. at all,
That's
you know?
exactly right. Yeah. So what Lori is saying is, in your experience, as you've learned to regulate your emotions, there's a lot of people that, have their own idea that that is maybe boring or not being communicated by you, not being dramatic. But you were also saying an important point that a lot of people don't realize is, remember we talked about in Chinese medicine, we actually become slaves to our emotions. They take us to places that are irrational and don't make sense. That's part of the ego. Not that we can't have emotions and not that we shouldn't have them and we should be able to express them, but there's a point where we're so out of balance with them. They take us to inauthentic places and further away from our authentic self. And we live in a time too where everything has a word, right? Where people could convince you that, by you not being emotional, let's say with maybe a family member, and they are, that, okay, you're suppressed or you're, whatever, or you're not honoring their, so, we're in a place now in the world where there's so many concepts and terms that anybody could argue the way in or out of something, So we have to remember that about ourselves, right? We just, yeah. Remember we talked about like health is really not so much that this is kind of the same concept, the relative wave concept, right? That most people's lives, looks like this dramatic up, down, healthy, unhealthy, guts good, acid reflux, guts good, acid reflux, it's this dramatic up and down where, we're looking more for, we said, we got some ups and downs, of course, we're never going to be like zero, but they're more, everything's less dramatic, right? But we've got some gradual ups and downs and dips, and it's just more regulated overall. I think we call that the wave theory, right? Relative wave theory. And this, again, can look and feel very boring, but it's really only because people haven't felt that internally. This, to me, feels really good. This feels to me really, I just get anxious even looking at this. Like I feel like tense, like it reminds me of being young and just out of control. And yeah. So, and again, to remember that emotions are good, but we want to express them, but we don't want them to control our lives. And that's important, That's an important concept. So, anybody else want to comment on that? Anybody online want to comment on your own experience with this? Because I think why people or all of us don't reach another level is we're something about this, like I never drank coffee. I mean, I don't even really like coffee that much, but I'm just really into Starbucks a lot now. And to me, it is really, I've identified it, I know it, and I joke around. I don't want coffee because life is, you know, pretty clean and clear diet and lifestyle. And it's like one of the bad things that I do, it's like the one thing that's maybe a little wild that I do with, so I don't drink or anything. So, I do some coffee, which makes a little up and down sometimes, right? So, um, anybody online have any experience with that or questions? Yeah, unmute yourself if you want to add something personal.
They're just taking it in.
So again, we only see this sometimes, like when someone is in an alcoholic downward spiral. This is easy to see in other people, right? It's just always harder to see it in our own lives. So,
I think it takes a lot of time to learn what you don't want to do anymore.
Yes.
And like, I love coffee, but I now know that I don't want to, every time I drink it, I regret it.
yeah,
And so I just finally don't drink it anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it just takes time to learn these things.
yeah.
Put your foot down
We do kind of
Yeah.
repeat things
for a
yeah,
while.
just to make sure, we
Mhm.
have to make sure this is not. what-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so everybody in class is saying we do repeat things a little bit and get reminded, right? But that's okay. Um, Sometimes I think too, what I learned from some teachers is you can turn your perception of something into something that could be fun or exciting, like let's say coffee. Okay, well, a couple times a week or month, I'm going to do this instead of every day. And, instead of like the whatever the huge size is, the small one, I'm going to go out with friends and I'm going to like socialize when I do it, like we could find ways to make it like work, but it might require some intent, some processing. Yeah. To not be, yeah, I guess maybe the thing we're trying to remember and the idea of yin yang balance is we also don't want to go to an overly rigid extreme where if we see, alcohol or coffee, we're like, we ourselves become emotional or rigid or want to like get on a soapbox and talk to everybody about it. We maybe want to be able to have not either extreme, right? Or be too hard on ourselves. I see a lot of people do this. This is why I think people are still confused when they see me because they think I'm going to be like a diet dictator. And I think that is the worst thing you can ever do when you start to, in your mind, feel this food is bad and this food is good. And that's the way it is. Black and white, anytime you have this type of food, whether it has a healthy fat or not, or whatever your perspective is, this is really dangerous thinking, right? Everything could potentially be helpful on some level in some way, you know, maybe not all the time, but like they're, have people get eating disorders. And this is why we have so many fad diets, because people want this rigidness. And then what happens is after about a month, they can't do the rigidness, which means they fail. And then they get frustrated with themselves more. So then it becomes a downward internal spiral and lacking confidence, where we're really trying to build confidence in people, right?
And that's kind of, yeah, having awareness or acceptance for like whatever you're dealing with,
Yeah.
personal, family, whatever.
Sure.
And knowing that they're coping with their own way, whether it is with alcohol,
Yeah.
shopping, food, that they are doing the best they can.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just having that awareness of
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
Regina online, she was saying for her to own it and then make better choices and stick to
Mhm.
them and make,
Yeah.
make a life change.
Yeah. So we have to have an awareness and empathy for family and friends and people, but we also have to have empathy for ourselves. We are also all struggling on some level to become whole, right? So we got to be gentle on ourselves too. That's where a lot of people go haywire with the healing process. They're just too hard on themselves, too rigid, too, it's an old pattern they picked up somewhere. So,
That's, I think it starts with yourself, rigid with yourself and stuff. That's how you're gonna treat others.
yeah,
You know, and you may
Yeah.
not think of it that way, but if you're judgmental about what other people
Yeah.
are doing or whatever, and then you kind of look at yourself, it's like, "Ooh, I'm like that with myself.
Sure.
You know,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, this yin yang balance, right? Like this, we have to learn to, maybe healing is really about navigating the extremes, right? We have to have boundaries. That's like life. We have to have, as somebody who grew up in like in a meshed world, like, boundaries are like it's gonna be constant drama if you don't have. But at the same time, maybe there's Uncle Fred who drinks, but he's a good guy. He doesn't do anything negative. So we're gonna tolerate him and hang around the guy. Like that's just one example. But maybe to I think a lot of counselors use the term have grace for people. Just remember that we're all challenged at times. That's why when I go to stores and people are freaking out about like a Karen at a Target or something, I really don't get like bothered by it. I'm actually kind of amused, first of all. But number two, I am like really trying to look at this person, like I wonder what triggered them this day that this little thing could make them more emotional than I've ever been. Like you're just seeing someone to the 10th degree, and it's like, I don't know what somebody would have to do to make me do that. You'd have to like attack my child or something, like I don't know what else would elicit that reaction. So yeah, we got to have empathy for people, but it starts with ourselves. Yeah. Like my one, Pete always used to say, okay, every time I'd have a problem, he'd come in first, he'd go, okay, give yourself a pat on the back. You're doing the best you can. That's where we kind of started every conversation. That alone would like make you start crying or something. And then you're already like in the process of being better. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other insights into that online or in person? Okay. I didn't plan this, but now that I'm thinking, this is the perfect lead in to stage 2 of the healing process. So let's do stage 2.